Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I'm joined today by the light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, it's the Popo.
Hey. I did that just for Billy.
He brought it back
as a birthday present. Happy birthday, brother!
Is it your birthday today?
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness!
I'm really fired.
Goodness.
Hey, I'm really fired. Happy birthday, bro! I'm gonna give you a hug on camera.
All
Shoot,
right,
my bad. Happy birthday. Only reason you knew is probably because of social media, so I don't even want to hear that, bro. It's cheating now.
Well, of course. That's the only reason why I know anybody's birthday is social media.
It ain't special no more. Real quick, we are also joined by a very, very special guest, very special friend of mine, Miss Glenna Oliver. What is going on, Miss Glenna?
Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon. What time is it? Oh, I guess it is afternoon.
Yeah, well.
But I'm a dispatcher, so that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, oh, no, what?
That.
Yeah, I mean, so it is, it's almost nighttime for AJ. And so, I think it is. What time is it there? 3:15? But anyways.
3:13.
Oh, okay. Well, it's great to have everybody in the building today. And Billy, man, I feel so bad, bro. I didn't know it was your birthday today.
Oh, it's all good, man.
But hey,
No,
but this is how you get back at him. Hey, when's my birthday though?
That I don't know.
There we go. There we
Look
go.
on social media.
Yeah, there we
Hey,
go.
Ryan, the only person I know that does something wrong and then make you feel bad about it. Like,
Hey, hold on. Pump your brakes, bro. Don't say that out loud because, see, my wife is going to listen to this. She's like, see, I know it's not just me.
I'll take it back. Edit it out, Billy.
So happy birthday. My son's birthday is tomorrow, May the 4th. He is a Star Wars baby, so I better remember that one because then I really get fired for that.
Yeah, you get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. So it's good. The month of May for me is like birthday month because my dad's coming up. My grandfather's 97th birthday is coming up next week.
Mother's Day is next weekend,
next
so we can't forget that, fellas. We can't forget that.
Nope, can't forget that. So a lot is on the horizon there, and then fair or foul. So. We haven't done a fair or foul in a while before we jump into the podcast, but fair or foul. So my little daughter, she's 2 years old, and she is the sweetest thing, cutest thing ever, but she's like a low-key hoarder. So a while back, I remember one day I was looking, like it was morning time, and I go to work early, and so I went in the bathroom to brush my teeth, and I couldn't find my toothbrush. I was like, where the heck did my toothbrush go? So my wife... luckily my wife, she always has a secret stash of like toothbrushes for when we travel and stuff. So I just used one of those. And I was like, babe, where did my toothbrush go? Like, I do not know where my toothbrush went. And so Rylan, she has like a little stroller. And so we went into I looked over, we were just outside randomly. And I opened up her stroller, her baby stroller, and she had my toothbrush inside of it with all types of other stuff. So I was like, okay, wow, Rylan, so you just took my toothbrush. So fast forward. If you guys listen to the podcast, and AJ and Billy know this, y'all know I lost my car key a couple weeks ago.
Oh, no.
Y'all know where this is going. So I lost my car key. And I was going crazy. We were in Florida. I kept thinking about it. I was like, man, I do not know where my keys are at. Like, I right before the day we left for Florida, I was looking all over. I could not find it. It was terrible. I went back to the field, my son's baseball field, thinking I dropped it out there. I went to my in-laws. I was like, man. So then I was like, okay, cool. We went to Florida for a week. I was like, you know what? Let me just come back with a fresh set of eyes. And when I get back, first thing I'm going to do is look for my car key because I only have one key. And so I'm looking all over for this key. Can't find it. And I was like, man, like it sucks. It's gone. So I have my
Corvette keys are not cheap, man.
Them Ferrari keys is expensive. Like $3,000 for a Ferrari key.
Whatever. So anyways, I'm like, man, I gotta pay for another key. So
They're calling you out.
Oh man. So I end up paying for another key, and it cost me $668 for this key. Right? $668. And so fast forward like 3 days after I get this new key, my wife sends me a picture. She's like, found it. And so she found my key in Rylan's play toys.
Oh no.
So Rylan grabbed my keys and then took it wherever her little hoarding self, and then took it to where the rest of her toys. And so after I paid almost over $700, I found my key and I can't even use it no more.
So they deactivate the old one.
Yeah, because it's programmed. It's like computers. So like they deactivated it, so I can't even use it no more.
Just skip a few months of college savings, and that's her paying.
That's what I was gonna say. That's gotta come out her allowance or
Thank
something.
you.
Yeah, you gotta get that back.
So anyway, so yeah, I was kind of upset about that. But anyway, you can't. She's so cute. I can't even be mad at her. So. But anyways, enough about me, enough about current events. I want to jump right into today's topic. Some of you guys that listen to this podcast, you guys are going to be so excited because you guys have been saying this is long overdue. Since the time we started this podcast, which was almost 3 years now, you guys have been saying we need a dispatcher on the podcast. And for whatever reason, we have not had a dispatcher. And Glenna has let me know at work, how upset she is because I have not brought her on any sooner. And so forgive me, but if you guys, anybody knows Ryan, y'all know I procrastinate to the fullest. And so this is procrastination at its best. We finally got her on the podcast. Glenna is a current dispatcher at the same department that I work on. And so today we are going to speak dispatch. And I said that because that's a shout out to Glenna's podcast that she has, which is called We Speak Dispatch. And so you see how I did that, man? I should be on the radio.
I like that. We're going to speak dispatch.
Well played. Well played.
Get me on the radio. So without further ado, let's get into it. Glenna, tell us about who you are, where you come from, and basically how you got into dispatch.
Yeah. Okay, we'll save that story for last. So you are correct. I am one of your dispatchers. I'm your favorite dispatcher, but I am one of your favorite dispatchers.
That's right.
True that. Make sure nobody else hears that, though, because I still need them to help me out when I work.
I don't know why you hide that, Ryan. It's okay. I've been dispatching for 25 years for the same police department. I am a tactical dispatcher, so I work with the SWAT team. I am a training officer, so we train all those dispatchers. Yes, that is my dog in the background. No, I don't ever give them any rules, so if she wants to stay there, she can. I am also the peer support coordinator for our department, so I help run the peer support program department-wide.
Nice.
Department instructor, anything and everything I can get my hands in because I do love my department and I do want to see it succeed. So that's kind of what I do aside from dispatching.
And you're also doing other work outside of just dispatching now too, right? Can you just
yes,
tell us a little bit about
I do have my own business, the 911 Wellness Project, and that is a training company for first responders with a special emphasis on dispatch training classes. My focus is on wellness. However, one of my beliefs is that the more educated you are as a dispatcher, the more well-rounded you are. So the more training you have in tactics-based dispatching or crisis negotiations or dealing with mental health, callers, everything like that, the more educated you are, the more well-rounded you are, the healthier you are as a dispatcher. So my classes tend to go from the wellness spectrum all the way down to active shooters and all of that.
Perfect. We're going to make sure our audience gets all your information before we leave out of here so they can reach out to you. But that's so great. And just so you guys know, Glenna is phenomenal, not only at doing her business outside of work, but just a phenomenal person in general. And she's really great at what she does. And AJ, you know, this is a long time coming when we talk about dispatch. This is another side of the house that people don't always see. They don't know what goes on. There's a lot of myths surrounding dispatch. And then there's also a term I'm going to bring up right now, which is secondary trauma, that I want to make sure we talk about today because people don't know what secondary trauma is. And so when we talk about dispatch, you know, we've talked so many times about what we do in the field as police officers, why we do what we do, how we do what we do. We talk about use of force. But one of the things that often gets left out is the initial calls for service when people call police and need somebody out there and how the whole operation works. And, and then also, these people that call in, a call for service and, the ones that are taking their last breath or the ones that are just experiencing some crazy experience and now Glenna or somebody has to get us that information so that way we can do our job the best. And so am I right in saying that, AJ?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people don't understand like the stress of a dispatcher. And, just think about like like what they experience, like when they get the call and the stress that goes on them because they have to send an officer, and then sometimes like they feel accountable, like if an officer gets hurt going there. And I don't want to steal too much of Glenna's thunder because I have like a list of questions, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Perfect. So let's start there, Glenna. Let's talk about the stresses of the job of being a dispatcher, because I think sometimes there's this myth out there that, oh, dispatchers, it can't be that hard, or you know what, you guys don't go through the trauma that we go through. So let's talk about that stress and some of the myths out there that surround dispatch.
Okay, so the bottom line, we have to start with the premise that trauma is trauma. So it doesn't matter if I'm experiencing trauma here at home or at work, it's going to affect me. Dispatchers experience trauma every single time they pick up the phone, and it's a critical incident. And the basis of a critical incident is that one incident could be critical to me and then not to you, Ryan, or it could be critical to my partner and it doesn't really affect me. But with the basis of trauma being trauma, there's no difference than how a dispatcher reacts to a critical incident or reacts to the stress than the officers in the field do. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to start getting out there, especially when we're talking about the mental health for law enforcement. There is a big push for mental health for law enforcement, and we're focusing on the officers, which we should be, but we also need to be focusing on the dispatchers. It's definitely something that is forgotten nationwide. Because I'm involved in our peer support program, it's definitely not forgotten in our dispatch center or in our department, but I'd like to see it more prevalent in more departments across the nation, California included.
Before I let you jump into some questions, I just want one quick question for Glenna. Glenna, how has everything that's been going on in the law enforcement realm affected you as a dispatcher? Because it's a little different from the standpoint of is you guys aren't actually out there interacting with the community sometimes. So you don't get the people necessarily that may be flipping you off, throwing you the bird or whatever it may be, because
but we get the phone calls.
You get the phone calls. Exactly. And so how does that affect you guys when it comes to dispatching when we look at a nation that is really against cops right now?
Well, and that's kind of a hard question to answer. So as a dispatcher, it hurts. It hurts us as a community. You know, our biggest heroes are our law enforcement officers. You know, we see what they go through every single day. That is our job, to support the law enforcement community. Our job is to do everything we can so that they go home safe. And the fact that it's getting harder and harder to do that, and so much is out of our control, it really it hurts and it takes its toll. That is a whole different stressor in and amongst itself. We really have to watch ourselves on social media because we always want to. We always want to back the blue, back the blue, back the blue. Sometimes we just can't, because either, you know, if an officer is wrong, an officer is wrong. We're not going to support that, but we know a particular call, or we know what's going on behind the scenes, and we're just wanting to say, everybody just take a step back, take a deep breath. There's an agenda here. You've got to not contribute to that agenda. But we can't, number one, because we're dispatchers, and so people think that we don't know what we're talking about. And number two, because we have to maintain that integrity of law enforcement, and not put out a persona that, you know, we're the ultimate authority and what we say goes. You know, because dispatchers being type A personality, it's my way or the highway. That's needed for the job. And in case you guys didn't know that's the way it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But we can't be like that in the community. And so that makes it difficult, very difficult.
Gotcha.
For everybody that's not in the field of law enforcement, there's like a number one rule, and it's kind of like unspoken but understood. You don't tick off dispatch. You do not. That's a no-no. You do not tick off dispatch, because it'll be 5 minutes to the end of your shift and you will be on scene of a crash or something crazy that you don't want to be on scene on. So, Glenn, I do have a couple questions for you. The first of which is the department that I work for. We have call takers. So like if someone calls 911 or like the non-emergency number, like that's their job for, you know, half of the shift. Then we have like dispatchers who are like on the radio with us. Do you do both of those, or do you do one?
I do both of them. So
Okay.
we don't have any set time or schedule. We have 3 different job functions. We have call takers, we have radio dispatchers, and then we have a secondary radio that we like to keep open to check records, wants, and warrants, get officer requests, and all that.
Yeah.
But we're a smaller department, so we can do all of that. If my partner goes to the bathroom, I'm actually doing both all of them at the same time.
That was my follow-up question. So I just want people to understand that, certain departments, that's their job. Like that's their one job for 4 or for 8 or for 10 hours. They just answer the phone. I don't want to say just answer the phone, but they answer the phone, or they do like warrants, NCIC checks, which is like a background check, warrant checks, like run a license plate, or they dispatch. And Glenn is telling you that there are dispatchers that do all 3 at the exact same time. So when you talk about stress,
oh yeah,
crazy. Like hats off to my dispatchers. Like I cannot say it enough. But I do want to share a really quick story and then ask you a question afterwards, because I have a feeling I already know what the answer is.
Okay, go ahead.
In 2013, I was involved in OIOS. So I was involved in an officer involved shooting. The backstory to that is I didn't immediately mark my location. So like things kind of like unfolded really fast. Like we were driving down the street and this guy like flags us down. And he's like, hey, my sister's in here ODing. And we're kind of just like, what's going on? So we go around the back, there's people running everywhere. And the next thing I know, I'm involved in a shooting. Now I got the location out somewhat. All right. So like when I fire my gun, I make sure everything's safe. The bad guy is down. I air officer in trouble. And then I go the big green house on blank street. And everyone knew where this house was because it was like an active house. And the reason I did that is because I knew one of my coworkers would know the address and they would air it. So instead of me thinking like, oh, what's the address here? I'm just like, I'm at the big green house on blank street. Right. And they were just like, okay, it's blank, whatever. So afterwards, everything was good. The suspect ended up living. I had some scrapes, partially torn bicep. Fast forward a year, my shooting was deemed justified. 2 years later, I was out at the bar with a couple of my coworkers, and there was a group of dispatchers out there. And I recognized one of the dispatchers, so I walk up to him. I'm talking to him, and one of the male dispatchers walks up. He goes, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I'm like, I'm in trouble. What I do now?
Yeah, you are.
So we walk around the side of the bar, and he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I was dispatching the day of your shooting." And he's like, "I've always wanted to like yell at you for not letting me know where you were, because it drove me crazy. Like all I wanted to do was get you help. And as soon as you aired, 10-3, which is our officer in trouble call, the radio was so busy. I was juggling, trying to check your GPS, trying to check your last known location." And he was like, it was extremely like stressful. And I've just been like waiting for this opportunity to tell you that. So like moving forward, even if you do it on a back channel or send me like a message, because we could like send our dispatchers messages on the computer of where you're at, like I would greatly appreciate it. And it kind of made me take a step back and go, wow, I never thought about the stress that I put the dispatcher in that situation and how easily it could have been avoided if I just would have said, "Hey, we're getting flagged down in front of this location or near this intersection." He would have been able to get cars to me much faster and, whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I tell you that story to ask you this question. Mm. What are your biggest pet peeves that officers do on the daily? And you could throw Ryan under the bus if you want, because we do it every episode.
Yes. They do.
Yeah, everybody loves Ryan, but he's needy. Let me tell you.
Hold on.
We all know you preaching to the choir here. All right.
Hey, I get on the radio. I'm like, "Hey, dispatch, can y'all go call Starbucks up and order me a latte, whatever?" I'm gonna pick it up.
The truth of it is, he's calling us saying, "Hey, what can I get you from Starbucks?" Mm-hmm. So that's the truth of it. So we all have our pet peeves. But let's change that word, because what you're talking about there is something that happens often.
Yeah.
I had a call, and I'll try not to go too far into it, but I had a call probably 20 years ago now. I had detectives in a different city working a homicide and following the murder suspect. And out of the blue at 3:00 in the morning, I get a phone call. "Hey, we're following the guy. He's gone mobile. Can you get me some units from such and such city over here?" "Sure. Where are you?" "Well, actually, I don't know." Okay, not really going to be able to do much for you. But then right at that moment, they said, we were on this street, but now we're turning down an alley. And then I hear a little bit of cussing, and I hear, he's got a gun. And then I hear shots fired, and then I hear running. You want to talk about a pet peeve? It's not knowing where you are. And honestly, there was really no way to avoid that unless you had proactively looked to see where you were going to be, could possibly be going. But I could have been a lot more proactive in that I could have looked and seen where he was going. So always know your location and always be prepared to give it. But then on the other end, the dispatchers should be connecting enough with their officers and their deputies to be kind of knowing what's going on. It would have been paramount if you had said, we're being flagged down at such and such location, because they could have at least started units there.
Yep.
But again, I'm a smaller agency. If you do say the greenhouse on the corner of such and such, or if you say so-and-so's house, because we contact him 3 times a day, I would probably know where that is. But larger agencies know your location beforehand. That's probably the only thing that really irritates me is when you guys don't know where you are.
I wanted to touch on something with AJ. Is very similar to AJ, and I want to just talk about this unique relationship that officers have with dispatchers, because it's along the same lines. And I didn't understand this until I became a police officer. But very similar to AJ, I never forget, this was probably almost a year ago. I was involved in we had a stolen vehicle traveling through our city, and I picked it up first. And so as I picked it up, I got on the air and I'm like, hey, I'm with the car. And so there's a little bit of confusion because they didn't know, or I said I'm approaching a certain intersection, but it was a little confusing at how it came out because they thought I was with the car already. So anyways, long story short, I'm just trailing the car and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna wait for my other partners to get here before I light this car up. And the reason we'll do that sometimes is so if you're don't know anything about law enforcement, sometimes we'll wait for a second unit because we know sometimes, especially if you're chasing a stolen vehicle or if you're following a stolen vehicle, the moment you turn those lights and sirens on, sometimes the chase is going to be on and you don't want to get into it. And you don't want to get into a chase if you don't have to, if you're by yourself. So you want to wait for another unit to catch up. And so I said, okay, hey, I'm going to follow this vehicle until another unit gets with me. So another unit gets with me, and sure enough, I turn on my lights and sirens, and then they're gone. So now we're in a pursuit. So we start trailing into going into another city. And in my mind, I'm updating my dispatch regularly. I'm like, hey, we're coming up on this intersection. Speeds are this. Hey, we're coming up on this intersection. Speeds are this. Like in my mind, I'm thinking I'm updating them as I should. So this dispatcher kept saying, okay, update your location. And in my mind, I'm just thinking like, I am updating my location. Like, hold up, I'm trying to catch up. And so anyways, long story short, we get this car pulled over, they stop, and then everything is going smooth. Right? So then shortly after we're getting all this felony or higher traffic stop, they get back in the car and they take off. So now we're in pursuit again, and now we're in another city. And so as I'm trying to catch up, I'm like looking for street signs because I don't know where the heck I'm at. I'm looking like trying to find landmarks. And so the dispatcher's like, update location. And so long story short, the driver gets out, he foot bails, or the passenger gets out. He's a male. He gets out, foot bails. I stay with him. I chase him because there's a female driver. She keeps going. And so he turns a corner, and as he turns his corner, the last thing I'm thinking is like, man, I don't want to chase this dude around this corner because if he has a gun out, I'm done. So I come around this corner, I already have my gun out, and luckily I'm able to get him to prone out, everything in safely and everything like that. Well, the next day in briefing, one of the things we do is we debrief situations, and we'll bring the dispatchers in that were involved in that stressful situation because it's good to kind of know what everybody's thinking about when the situation is occurring. So that way you can learn and obviously understand how to do things better. Well, I thought everything went good. We got the guy in custody, not that big a deal. Well, the dispatcher that was dispatching came in and she was furious, like hot. She was like, well, I just felt like, you weren't updating your location and you weren't telling me where you were at. And then I'm worried about you and this and that. And then it got personal to where she started crying and saying, I thought about your wife. And if I didn't know where you were at and I didn't do my job well enough and I couldn't get people to where you're at and something bad happened to you, I don't know how I was going to. And I never thought of things that way. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, hey, I'm updating you. I know where I'm at. And so the reason I say we have this unique relationship is because when we're out there in the field, we're doing a whole bunch of different things. You know, I'm pointing a gun at somebody. I'm making sure that I'm safe, where we sometimes think that dispatchers, like, man, they're just in there being overly picky and want things a certain way, not knowing how it's going on in the field. But in reality is that's not the case. They really do care about us out there, and they want to know the scariest thing for them. And I know this from talking to them, is that not knowing where we're at or not knowing what's going on, that anticipation. And so when there's a silence on the radio, it's scary for them because they can't see what's going on, where all of us out there in the field, we know what's going on. So we know where we're at. We know if it's hype. We know if it's not. So just think about watching a movie and you're building it up and you don't know that anticipation without knowing, as opposed to the person that's seen the movie before and already knows what's about to happen. They're not as stressed out because they know what's coming. And so that's kind of this unique relationship that dispatchers have with the officers. And it really opened my eyes up when she said, I'm thinking about your wife and what, you know, what if I don't get you to home safely? So talk a little, expound upon that a little bit, Glenna, if I'm right in saying that. Okay, yeah, that, you know what, and I'm sitting here like, oh, I want to jump in, I want to interrupt you, I want to go, but, so, yeah, and that's huge. How can we mitigate that, though? So when we talk about, so a couple of things. Number one, dispatchers need to stay in their lane, and that's the bottom line. We're dispatchers, we know what we do, and so we need to stay in our lane. We're not officers. However, we need to know and understand your job to be able to effectively do ours. So when you talk about that silence on the radio, it is a killer. It just, that's the most stressful part of anything. When you're on a felony traffic stop and he's got a gun to his head and you're like, okay, is he going to shoot himself or is he going to shoot my officer? Like, you don't want either of those outcomes. You want to know what's going on, and you're not seeing it. And we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we talk about post-traumatic stress and trauma later. But how can you help mitigate that as a dispatcher? How can you help get rid of that stress in your life? Ride-alongs. Ride-alongs. And if anybody out there is in an administrative position and you can institute this and put in a program where your dispatchers are right along with your officers or your deputies, do it. Because you are, not only could you potentially save an officer's life, you could potentially save a dispatcher's life. Because if you have a dispatcher in crisis, which we have them everywhere, and they're working a critical incident and the outcome isn't so great, she's probably, or he is probably going to leave his position and or have post-traumatic stress that could lead to PTSI or PTSD, or he could end up, so severely in crisis that they end up killing themselves, which is a very real thing that happens with dispatchers as well as officers. Ride-alongs. Aside from ride-alongs, get involved in your special assignments. Very blessed in my department that I'm a tactical dispatcher, so I can train as much as I want with my SWAT team. And so like I said, I've been doing this for 25, and I started when I was 25. So put the math together. You all know how old I am. I don't train so much with my SWAT team anymore. In fit, like where I'm going out there and doing it. But I have been a suspect when they break into a house, when they breach the door and they throw their flashbangs. I've been a suspect that I've got shot at. I've been a victim. So, when they're shooting at the suspect and you're right there. And then I've also been a SWAT officer in all of these trainings. That's good. I've gone on ride-alongs where we've had real pursuits, but I've also gone on ride-alongs where the officer has taken the time to go through the steps of what a pursuit is. When he's calling out a traffic stop, he's verbalizing to me, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm offsetting. This is why I'm approaching the car like this. This is why I have my hand on my gun. This is why I'm doing this. Those are effective ride-alongs. I know some of the times dispatchers want to ride along because there's a hot officer in that car, or an officer says to the dispatcher, please come ride along with me, because they just want that phone number or something. But there's a lot more to it than that. So if that's why you keep your dispatchers out of the patrol units, that's wrong. We are professionals. We need to act like professionals. If professional things aren't going on because of it, you need to address that, and you can't have dispatch as a whole be taken out of that situation because of the faults of one or two dispatchers.
Glenna, it's so funny that you say that, because a lot of like what we do separate from this podcast, Ryan and myself, and then even with this podcast, is just try to, understand different people's perspectives. And the reason behind that is to better ourselves, whether it's professionally or personally. And you hit the nail right on the head. Like, if there's ever anything that you don't understand or that you're somewhat of a part of, like, your best solution for that is to dive right in, like dive right into the profession, dive right into understanding what that field is. And I'll say this, as a police officer, on the flip side, you need to get to know your dispatchers and know their job. And I'm saying that as an officer that had to learn that the hard way, because I've had my run-ins with dispatchers as well, as far as like me thinking that they had it out for me, or that they, called me out on main air or on a back channel, or they were disrespectful. But, I'll be man enough to sit here and say, like, the more that I got to know their jobs, the stress and the trauma that they experience as well, was the moment that was the moment that I had to take a step back and go, you know what? I was wrong in some of these situations. Like, I now know why they ask me where I'm at, or why I need to air my location, or why I need to speak clearly, or why I need to slow down and give a better description and, whatnot. So you hit the nail right on the head with that, Glenna.
You guys, you guys brought up some good topics for sure, and I think that, like you said, Glenna, how do we mitigate that? You're absolutely right. The ride-alongs, and it goes both ways, and that's funny because in that situation, the dispatcher and I, that's what we came down to. That was the result is, hey, come ride with me, or vice versa, so we can figure this out together. And so I want to transition really quickly for the sake of time, and I want to get into this trauma. You guys handle calls or take calls that are very difficult sometimes. I mean, and if you guys are not in law enforcement, don't know anything about dispatch, you got to realize that these are the people that if somebody's taking their last breath, they're calling 911, and some of these dispatchers have heard people take their last breath on the phone. Or
they hear the gunshot.
They're
going to kill themselves.
So let's talk about that trauma, and maybe you might have an example of something that you've experienced and how you dealt with it, or what you train people or teach people to do it, how to deal with that trauma.
Okay, so with the basis that trauma is trauma, mental health is one of the 3 pillars of a healthy dispatcher, being mentally healthy. It has traditionally been ignored by administration or by people in the organization. And it kind of goes down to not really realizing that your dispatchers are professionals just as much as your officers or your deputies are, or anybody else in the organization. Everybody plays a part. So speaking to mental health, when you have a traumatic incident, and it doesn't matter if I think it's traumatic or you think it's traumatic, it's whatever is traumatic to you. If you have a child on the phone that you've given CPR to, and the child or the baby or whatever is called on scene, and you feel like you didn't do enough, because that's usually the feeling, is you take responsibility for that death, which in reality, you had nothing, you had no way of helping other than what your skill set is. And it's just something that happens, but you feel responsible for that. You need to be debriefed. You need to have what we call a diffusing, meaning somebody needs to check on you and talk about the incident with you right away. And then you need to have a debrief to where you can talk about things that you felt you did right or that you did wrong, or just get it out there. And a lot of times it should be with a professional. And I'm saying a professional, either some type of peer support staff that has training, or even better yet, is with your EAP or your emergency assistance program. Doing that on a regular basis keeps the big incidents from being huge. And with the way that the police department and law enforcement is viewed in this society today, there's a lot more huge incidents than there were before, or at least the effects of these big incidents are really coming into play with dispatchers as well as officers as well as deputies. So you need that support, and it's vital to get that support. So before we go further, let's continue to talk about support though. And I am going to give a couple of shout outs if you guys don't mind. when we talk about support, we're talking about education, and we're talking about the trauma and taking care of your mental health and getting through with that. So dispatch doesn't have a lot of support. Now saying that, my dispatch center does, or at least I think my dispatch center does. And I hope our other dispatchers, if they don't feel like they have support, they will watch this and they will come see me. However, a lot of times there's just not the support there. So the social media is the worst thing that happened to this world, and social media is the best thing to happen to this world, because you've got things like this going on. But then you also have a lot of BS that happens, and you have somebody else that is controlling the narrative. So that's something total different episode. But one of the things that a friend of mine had said that really stuck with me is, this is the era of the headset. Meaning we're taking our mental health as dispatchers, we're taking our mental health a lot more seriously, and we're going outside of the box to get some help. So there is this group on Facebook. It's called Nocturnal Dispatchers Life in the Dark. It's a closed group. It's got 49,000 dispatchers in one group. Did I just scare you guys? I scared you, huh? That's a little scary.
That's a lot, yeah. I would feel uncomfortable in that group.
I just ticked a little bit when she said that. I heard radio clicks in the background.
In that it's great support. There is a lot of BS that happens on there, but they've got moderators and administration that kind of tries to keep that down. And they're type A personality. It's their way or the highway. But I've noticed, and I've been checking it the last couple weeks because I really wanted to talk about this. When somebody needs support, they're right there. They're right there. They're talking to them. They're telling them. Just the other day, I saw a thing. There was a tornado in a county back east, and there's a post on there that says, "Hey, so-and-so dispatchers, we hear you. You're doing a great job." And then there's 5,000 responses to just that post alone, that if I'm that dispatcher and I look at that, I feel support. I feel like my group gets it. So if you're not getting support from your department, go outside, go into the community of dispatch, not just the regular community. People will call you crazy. You'll end up in a padded room. But that helps a lot. And then the second part of that is education. The more education you have, the less likely it is that you'll suffer from a post-traumatic stress injury. It's one of the resiliency factors. Again, if your administration doesn't support dispatchers, go outside and get education. On social media, again, Ricardo Martinez has Within the Trenches media, and he does things like open mic live once a week, where we just all get together and we talk about all of our open mics. And Ryan, you can attest, I have some pretty famous ones.
If you don't know what open mic is, so if you're listening to this,
thing in the world.
Open mic, yes. Open mics are hilarious. So what open mic is somebody accidentally keys their mic and doesn't realize their microphone is on, and so so you hear their
colorful things come out of their mouths.
And it is so funny. You can look up open mics on I don't know if you guys saw the LA County deputy who had an open mic when he was having sex with somebody.
Oh, betrayal.
Oh, man. So, and that, obviously he got in trouble.
When he was having somebody that wasn't his significant other. Yeah, I was
exactly
there. Yeah, I heard it.
But sometimes,
an officer.
Yeah, but sometimes you get open mics talking trash about other people
or dispatchers.
Or dispatchers.
Or dispatchers talking trash about the officer. Yeah, that's always fun.
Yep.
That's how I actually met one of our officers one time. I was cussing him out. Is that so effing hard? And it
yeah. He's probably like, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know. How do I respond to this?
A little bit. But funny story with that. This is coming from full circle. In September, he will be my lieutenant.
Oh, that is funny. We had an officer who was getting off work and took his gun belt off with his radio on and threw it in his trunk. And when he backed out of his parking spot, his gym bag rolled over on his radio and like hit the mic. So he had a hot mic, which aka open mic, and he was listening to a Tupac song. All right. And you could hear him rap every single and this dude, first off, I was like, is he listening to Tupac? And then for him to be like, yeah, beep, 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 beep. I was like, oh, and we couldn't do anything normally when there's a hot mic or an open mic, we could open our mics and go, hey, hot mic. We just scream in the mic, hot mic, hoping that they hear it or hoping that an officer nearby is like, hey, idiot, like undo your mic. But this was in his trunk, so he couldn't hear us. So we're blowing his cell phone up. Like, I mean, we heard half of this song. Like, it was so bad that we all had to go back to a back channel. Like, the lieutenant got on the air and was like, all right, all traffic go back to A for now. So we're all like on a back channel. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna stay on the main air.
Man, it was, I remember one time I was on a call and the person that had the open mic is no longer with us. He retired, and I love this dude, but we were on the call and you just hear somebody say like effing such and such, and it was like one of our ranking officers. He was like cousin. He was like effing such and such. He was like that dude such and such, and we're all like open mic, open mic.
Yeah, open mic. You're just hoping you cover anything else that the guy might say.
Yeah,
and we have the capability of knowing who has the open mic. Thank goodness. Otherwise, there'd be a lot of people fired.
Yeah,
but open mics are. But it's also funny. And so when you get together as dispatchers and you talk about all the open mics you hear, it just kind of leads to other fun things. And by the time you're done with this 1 hour session that you do live on Facebook, you're laughing and cutting up. And he checks in with everybody in the beginning. Hey, give me your numbers. Where are you between 1 and 10? And then he checks in at the end. And just that little thing is such great support. But then he also puts on virtual conferences that don't cost dispatchers a dime. It's all volunteer. He gets 4, 5, 6,000 people to go to these conferences virtually. And we learn so much. So when I say it's the era of the headset, education and your mental health and support, those are big deals for dispatchers. Go outside of your department if they're not supporting you in those.
We have to remind ourselves that we cannot pour into others unless we have people pouring into us. Like we absolutely have to have people pouring into us. So like what you're saying is spot on. And I appreciate you saying that. And shout out to all the dispatchers out there. Like if you're a dispatcher listening to this, like shout out to you. I know this is a fact. Like you don't get praised like you should. Nope. I know that officers are hard to work with. I get it. I understand it. So I just want to take a moment and shout out our dispatchers. You girls and guys are absolute rock stars. If it wasn't for you guys and girls, like we would lose our minds. Like, we would absolutely lose our minds.
And if you're a newer officer or somebody aspiring to go into the profession, make sure you treat your dispatchers right. Because trust me,
y'all
we cannot.
Coffee? Y'all want some donuts? What y'all want? Pizza?
We cannot do our job effectively without them. And trust me, when you find a good one like Glenna or somebody else,
it's a game changer.
Yeah, it is a game changer. It's crazy. You would never think this, but you can tell the difference between a seasoned dispatcher and somebody that's not seasoned. And so,
without a doubt.
So if you are a young dispatcher, strive to get better. Strive to go out there, like Glenna's saying, find different resources, and then talk to your officers. Talk to them about critical incidents. Hey, how did this go? What could I do better? What can I not do better? Or what did I mess up on or whatever. And then if you're a seasoned dispatcher, go back and just make sure that you're not becoming complacent. You know what I mean? Because sometimes mistakes happen when we get complacent, just like officers. When we get complacent, that's where the mistakes happen. So until you retire, we can always learn something. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's for sure.
Until you retire, we can always learn something. So go ahead, AJ, because then I have a couple last things for Glenna, but go ahead, AJ. So you have something.
Glenna, I have a 2-part question for you.
Okay. I'm good.
The first part is, what piece of advice would you give to the dispatchers out there? The second part of that question is, what piece of advice, aside from letting dispatchers know where they are, would you give to police officers out there?
So what piece of advice would I give to the dispatchers? You can't pour into the lives of others until you are okay with yourself. You can't be an effective dispatcher if you're not okay. You can't help your officers if you're not helping yourself. You need to put your own oxygen mask on first. And that comes from when you're in an airplane, they tell you put your own oxygen mask on first and then help the person next to you. So make sure that if you're getting the support from your department, utilize it. If they're allowing you to go to debriefs, go to them. If they're not allowing you to, be an advocate for your center and push and push and push. And if you need me as my company to come into your dispatch center and talk to your administration, because that's where we start. We start with administration. We start with the chief and we work our way down. We pour love into the dispatch center, but we also educate the rest of the department. So you need to be doing the same. You need to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else. And I know dispatchers' hearts. I talked about the officers being our heroes. Even more to me is knowing the dispatchers out there and said, don't get support, where you're a solo dispatcher and you're doing all three of what you talked about, AJ. We just had National Dispatch Appreciation Week, and some of these centers hadn't even been recognized. It just breaks my heart because these are my heroes. You know, these are the ones, because I know what your heart is and I know where your heart is at. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. And I know, man, I could call Ryan at 3:00 in the morning because we're friends, but I bet you if I was a stranger and I got a hold of Ryan at 3:00 in the morning, he would definitely call me. He would definitely give me support. AJ, I'm pretty sure you probably would too, but I promise not to call you at 3 in the morning. Hopefully I'll get sleep. Reach out until you're okay. Get yourself okay so everybody else around you benefits from who you are.
Amen.
And then for the officers, well, give me the question again. The officers, other than the location.
Yeah. So what piece of advice would you give an officer aside from making sure that they let you know where they're at?
Same thing that Ryan said. Get to know your dispatchers. Get to know the job that they do. It's just as simple as, so in California, we have CLETs, and you have to spell the first name correctly or it won't hit. But I always get officers that give me the last name of Smith, Sam, Mary, Ida, Tom, Henry, first name of blah, 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 common spelling. Just get to know your dispatcher's jobs, because then you guys will work so much better together. Because I'm telling you, a dispatcher's heart sits with her deputy or her officer on that critical incident. And we will always feel responsible, which we are not responsible for what happens in the field. But if we're complacent and somebody dies, you will be held accountable. But our hearts sit with you guys in the field. And for me, I'm so close with some of my officers. I have a girlfriend who's an officer. She's a canine officer. So I'm just as in love with her dog as I am with her. And I just love her so much. When she goes out on calls, I want to do everything I can to make sure she has all the resources she needs to be safe and have a positive outcome. And so make sure the officers are doing the same, investing in their dispatchers.
Nice.
And that doesn't include just coffee or donuts. As a matter of fact, maybe no donuts.
No. They need the donuts because I stopped by. They need the donuts because I stopped by dispatch to pick the donut up. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly. So that's why I need some treats.
Yes.
So Glenna, I'm gonna give you my questions real quick, and I'm gonna give them to you first, so that way you can think about them as I explain a scenario. So my questions for you are going to be, what's your most memorable experience, so like a happy experience as a dispatcher, like from a call, and what was the most tragic one, if you don't mind sharing. The reason I want to do that just because I want people to understand what you guys go through. And then but as you think of those, I want to share experience, because somebody may be wondering, okay, well, I know what it's like when an officer gets complacent, but what does it look like when a dispatcher may get complacent? And so I'm going to share an experience with me that I had. And I'm not saying that this dispatcher was complacent, because they may not have been complacent. It may have just been a complete mistake, but this is what it can look like. And so I remember one time I pulled over a vehicle, and as I pulled this vehicle over, I went up and talked to the guy who was a black guy and driving it. And I pull him over and I'm talking to him. And I run them, and it's customary practice for us to do records checks on people. And so the return came back that this guy was armed and dangerous, tied to a gang out of Texas. And so immediately I'm on defense mode. I'm by myself, and all my other partners are on an alarm call. So I'm really like the only guy right now that's available. So I go back to my car and I'm trying to strategize. Okay, what am I going to do? So I'm like, hey, confirm. So she's like, oh, and this guy had like a felony warrant for his arrest. So as I'm talking to the guy, I mentioned this warrant, and he's like, bro, I don't have a warrant. And I was like, bro, and usually when people tell me that, I'm like, nah, you're freaking lying. Like, majority of people we talk to are lying. So this dude's like, no, I'm seriously not lying. So I'm like, nah, bro, you got to. So anyways, I go back And so I asked my dispatcher, like, hey, can you confirm? He says he doesn't have a warrant. So this dispatcher's like, yeah, affirm. He has a warrant. It's him. I'm looking him up now. So then I'm like, so then I go back and talk to him again. He's like, bro, I'm like, have you ever been in Texas before? He's like, no, I've never been in Texas. I'm like, man, it's saying you have a warrant out of Texas and it's a felony warrant. And I didn't tell him about the armed and dangerous stuff. And so he's like, I'm adamant. This is not me. And I'm like, at this point in time, I'm like still hesitant because, I don't want to drop my guard. So I go back and then I ask like, hey, do I got it back? And they're like, yeah, we're trying to get you one, but there really is no back available because everybody's tied up on this other call where it's like a burglary in progress. So I'm like, dang. So finally somebody clears up. So what I do is I run this person myself on the computer and I'm like, I don't think this is the guy either. So all of a sudden I hear my dispatcher come back. She's like, oh crap. And she says it's on the radio. She's like, yeah, that's not him. And so I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like all good. So I go back and I reapproach him and I basically let this guy go and say, hey man, sorry for the confusion, blah, 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 blah. And they're on their way. My frustration with it is like, the moment I heard that this person's armed and dangerous and had a felony warrant, if I would have acted, pull my gun out and he starts, flipping out or doing some sudden movements and I start getting in fear and I end up shooting or using some unnecessary or some force on this guy and he's completely innocent, I'm the one that has to answer to it. And that dispatcher would as well. But it's just a simple thing like that to dot I's and cross T's can be the difference of life or death for either officer or the person we're dealing with. And so I wanted to bring that example, not as a knock as that person, because the person that did it was a good person. And it could have just been a flat out mistake, but that's what I'm talking about when we talk about, lapse in judgment. And Glenna, you've been a supervisor before and all this, so you can maybe either attest or either agree or disagree, but from an officer's standpoint, that's kind of the way I viewed it a little bit.
And you know what? You bring up such good points. Complacency and just not knowing or being new in your job, it's never an excuse. And in that case right there, as a dispatcher, you're thinking, I want to put him on alert. However, and the more you dispatch and the more you get into these lives with your officers or your deputies, you need to look more at how they view things. So any officer that goes to any call, there is a possibility that somebody could have a gun. You could send them to a barking dog and it can end up being an officer involved shooting.
Yep.
Officers understand that. And a big mistake that the dispatchers tend to make is that we forget that they know how to do their job and that they are going into every single situation knowing that there is a possibility that somebody could be armed, that somebody could be coming to get them, that the enemy is just right there. And in that case, us as dispatchers, we want to get that information out to you. And sometimes there is a bit of complacency where we're not confirming an identity beforehand, but it's also not our job to confirm identity. It's our job to give you the information based on what you're giving us. And it's your job to confirm the identity. So how, as a dispatcher, do we come together with that? Well, I know what questions to ask you. Give me a driver's license. I'll send you a Cal photo. In California, we can send out the driver's license picture. Give me tattoo information. Give me a place of birth. Give me everything that's in front of me. I'm going to now ask you to confirm for me instead of, yep, that's him. And now it's your job to take care of it. That's complacency. And I'm not saying that happened in this case, because everything that I'm talking about here is we have to know, was that dispatcher trained to do all this?
Yeah. And officers are guilty of it as well. And I've gotten mad at officers before. I'm like, hey, look, like, don't just be quick to throw this dude in cuffs and stuff. Like, dot your I's, cross your T's, and we all can be guilty of it. So I'm not pointing fingers, because there's times where I've taken shortcuts and I'm like, I shouldn't have taken that shortcut. But this is why we have a job, especially nowadays, with under so much scrutiny, that we can't afford these mistakes. We can't afford the mistakes I messed up on this dude's identity and used force when I should have never needed to use. I just watched a video of that today, and so I just wanted to throw that out there. And so I'm gonna get into the last questions I asked you, Glenn, and then we'll wrap it up. So best experience, worst experience.
Okay, it sounds funny, but my best experience was an active shooter incident that we had.
Wait, time out, time out. Can we do it in reverse? Can we do worst and then best? That way we just end on a high note.
Yes, let's do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
My worst experience that I ever had as a dispatcher was I was a training officer. My new dispatcher was on the radio. We had a critical missing of a 2-year-old child and had been missing for about 45 minutes. And we had done everything we could do. The office had done everything they could do. We could not find this child. Airship gets overhead of a neighbor who had a above ground pool, and the child was in the pool, face down, floating, no chance. The helicopter landed. The observer jumped out, grabbed the kid just as one of my officers got on scene. They pulled the kid out together, started CPR. But the thing that devastated me was I had a 2-year-old child at home. They had the same swim trunks, little Elmo swim trunks with little Elmo tennis shoes. I had to go home and throw away my son's swim trunks and tennis shoes. And there was nothing that we could have done on that call, but me being the training officer, there was even less. I had to let my dispatcher go through the motions of that call because she was at that point. I actually was crying sitting back there. I don't think I would have been crying or as emotional had I been on the radio, but that was hands down the single hardest call I've ever had to deal with because I felt useless and I felt like I couldn't do anything to help. And the anguish in these officers' voices, I can hear it as clear as day today. And that was probably, my son's 18 now, so it was 16 years ago. And hands down, that was the worst call I've ever had to deal with.
Best one. I'm sorry you had to experience that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
High note. Let's get it on a high note.
Okay, let's move on from that one. The high note was an active shooter that we had. I know that sounds so funny, but that's when I realized, you know what? I have an extremely important job here to do. I'm not just a voice on the radio. I'm not, quote unquote, just a dispatcher. I'm a dispatcher. What I say and what I do, it matters. What I know and the training that I have that I need to put into use to get a positive outcome, to keep my officers safe, that matters. Somebody's life depends on what I know and what I don't know, and what I do and what I don't do. So complacency, there's no place for that as a dispatcher. And I learned in that call alone how important it is to be a dispatcher. And I've experienced burnout as a dispatcher or compassion fatigue, but my burnout had nothing to do with dispatch. It was the passing of my father that threw me into that burnout or that compassion fatigue. So I knew I had chosen the right career when you can come off from an active shooter and go through the debriefings and everything and look back and go, that was the finest moment I had as a dispatcher because my training was put into play. And what I didn't know, thank God, what I didn't know didn't affect the outcome. But man, I went to every single training I could after that. I was already a tactical dispatcher when that started, but I took that job extremely seriously. I employed all my tactics as a tactical dispatcher. I employ them every single day. You need a perimeter setup. I know how to set that up. I may never set it up for you, but if I see that your perimeter isn't solid, I will be able to tell you because that's where my training lies. Wow. So that was definitely the best call I'd ever had. And I know that sounds so weird.
No, it doesn't at all. You're absolutely right. My partner and I were sent to a library on an active shooter. And this was probably about 3 years ago. And the call taker could actually hear gunshots as people were calling 911 in the library. So we just happened to be like 2 blocks away from the library. And this is one of our bigger libraries in Central Ohio. So we're flying there and I always have a long gun in the car. So I grab the shotgun and I hop out and me and my partner are running through this humongous, it's a massive library, 3 stories. It's huge. And as soon as we walked in, I remember telling myself, turn your radio up as loud as you can, because people were screaming, people were running by us, and we're like trying to scan for like a gun while people were running by us. And I was like, because I need to hear if this dispatcher says, hey, he's on the second floor, or hey, he's by the elevators. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I was like so dependent at that time, like, hey, I need my dispatcher right now, because they're going to tell me, okay, we just got another call. He's on the second story in the northwest corner, which is exactly what happened. They were like, hey, he's on the second story, northwest corner. There's like a bunch of like computers. He's back there. And I was just like, all right, boom, know where we're going. Yep. Ran up the escalator with the shotgun, and we ended up finding him. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I want you guys to realize too, these dispatchers are phenomenal at what they do. I've been on plenty of calls where, like she says, they'll set up a perimeter, tell you if there's holes in your perimeters. And also, I don't know if you know, I mean, sure you know this, Glenna, but sometimes it's just soothing to hear your guys' voice on that radio. If you're in a crazy situation, you key up and you hear your guys' voice sometimes, it's comforting to us to know that you're not by yourself, because sometimes you feel like you are all by yourself. You're all alone. You're in a fight or whatever.
Sometimes
it is.
you are.
Sometimes you are. Sometimes you are. And when you hear the voice, either the voice of a dispatcher or the sirens of your partners coming, those are the two things that are some of the most soothing things that can calm an officer down that's going through a critical incident. And so don't stop doing what you're doing. You guys are phenomenal at what you do. You guys matter to the officers tremendously. We could not do our job without you. And so I want you guys to know that. Really quick, I have three other things before we get done. First things first, I want to pray for a family member, or not a family, a friend of ours. They're kind of like family, friend of ours. You talk about drowning. They just had their 3-year-old child that was found in the pool face down yesterday. So good news is that I guess when they went to the baby went to the hospital, she was still breathing and they had a pulse. Dad did CPR, but it's a nightmare that as a parent I never want to have to go through. I've been on a few drowning baby calls as an officer. A few of them where the babies didn't make it, and it's just one of the most tragic things to go through. So I want to just pray for that family real quick, because they're struggling right now. Obviously, there's a lot of guilt, obviously, and there shouldn't be, but we're humans, and it's just a natural thing. And so I'm gonna pray for them, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do our one has to go, and then we're gonna allow Glenna to give us her information so people can find out where to reach her. So I'm gonna pray real quick, and then we'll move on. All right, dear Heavenly Father, I come before you, and I just ask that you bless this family that's going through just a trauma right now of the drowning of their baby. I just ask that you would preserve that baby's life and just restore her to just a precious little light to this world, Lord. I know sometimes we don't understand why things happen. We don't understand when they're going to occur or why they occur. But I just ask that you would just give this family the faith that they need to put their trust in you, and to know that your glory and your will be fulfilled at the end of the day, no matter what, and just allow them to find their comfort in that. And I also ask that you pray for those listening to this podcast that are also going through their own issues and drama and trials and tribulations. Just allow them to continue to have a restored faith in you, and continue to allow them to let you lead the way. So we love you. We thank you. We ask these things for your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
That being said, we're going to do one has to go, and then we're going to leave with we're going to allow Glenna to give her stuff. Tell our audience where they can find you at, Glenna, and all other good stuff, social media, your podcast, whatever it may be. And then I have the one has to go right after that.
Okay, we've got 911 Wellness Project at gmail.com. Anybody can email me at any given time. I do have other employees that check the email as well, but if it's anything that's wellness related, I will get back to you. I do have a Facebook page, 911 Wellness Project, have an Instagram page. My direct line is 760-887-6973. Call it anytime you guys need.
You better be careful, Glenna. You better be careful. You better be careful. Don't have your phone blowing up. Don't be blaming us.
Her up. Boy, I like it though. That's how dedicated she is. She gave you the sale.
I am not a professional as far as I don't have a degree in counseling or psychology, but I will find you resources. I don't care where you are.
Yes, she will.
I will find you resources.
Yes,
but
she will.
I do appreciate my sleep, so I will get back to you if I'm sleeping.
Yes, you notice I don't put my stuff out there because folks hit me up, and I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't get
Well,
back to
that's
you.
my business line. So yeah.
So thank you so much, Glenna. Please support Glenna. She's doing some phenomenal things, and I wouldn't bring anybody on this podcast who I didn't trust. And AJ is the same way, and so is Billy. And so we appreciate you, Glenna. And so now that we've established our friendship, it's time to end our friendship with one has to go. All right.
Oh,
all right.
the
So
dreaded one has to go.
yes, this is gonna be good, and this is gonna bring out the child in every single one of us a little bit. But I'm curious to see what you guys got. So these are Disney / Pixar movies. All right. First one is The Lion King. All right. Second one, Toy Story. Third one, Aladdin. And number 4, Incredibles.
Can you say them one more time?
Yep. Lion King.
I got mine.
Lion King, Toy Story, Aladdin, and Incredibles. I'll
What
start.
are we supposed to do with it though?
So you have to tell us, if we had to get rid of one of those movies forever, which one would you choose to get rid of? And so on that note, we'll start with you, Glenna. So if you had to get rid of,
So he broke.
can you hear me? All right.
Because you just cut out on all of that.
Yeah.
You gotta
Okay.
say that
So,
again.
Okay.
so
my
I'll
bad.
tell you. So you basically pick one to get rid of forever.
Forever.
So like if you're like you pick your least favorite and you just say, all right, that's the one I want to get rid of.
You're talking about Disney, dude.
Hey.
I got mine.
Hey,
That was
well,
the easy
he
one
said,
for me.
I already know what you're gonna say, but yeah. So one has to go forever. So I'll give him one last time. You got Lion King, Toy Story, Aladdin, or Incredibles. One of them has to go forever. Glenna already getting mad.
Okay.
All right, Glenna, you
I
go
am
first.
mad because I'm like, okay, Incredibles.
Yup, that's mine too. Incredibles gotta go.
Mine
It's
too.
got to go. Everything else is too iconic. And in
Wow,
Incredibles, they make
really?
the dad look like a lop. Like for the longest time, they make the dad look like he's a lop, and that's so not.
Wow.
That's not who fathers are. So that's why I'll
Ooh.
get rid of Incredibles.
Okay,
Ooh,
hold
she
on,
brought
hold on.
depth to
Okay,
it.
hold
Okay, that's
on.
what I'm
Okay.
talking about.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna change this up because I don't like this. I don't like the way this is going. All right. So it's too easy for y'all. We're gonna get rid of Incredibles for y'all. I'm gonna do y'all that solid and get rid of Incredibles.
Wait, did Billy say the Incredibles too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Good job, Billy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get rid of that, and I'm gonna put in Mulan.
Mulan, same. Gotta go. See
Yeah.
you, Mulan.
Seriously?
Yeah, Mulan's got to go.
Golly.
They're all great.
Bro, you named
but
3 bangers. Like you named Aladdin, Lion King, and
Well,
Toy. Like,
what other banger would there be though?
hold on. No, there's another one. What's the
Little
Beauty
Mermaid.
and the Beast, man. That's mine.
Little Mermaid is a good
Ooh.
one. Which one? Beauty and the Beast?
Beauty and the Beast.
Okay, so let's do that.
that one would go for me.
So so we're gonna replace Mulan and that we're gonna place it with Beauty and the Beast. So now you got Lion King, Aladdin, Toy Story, or Beauty and the Beast. There we go.
Aladdin. Gone.
You said Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go yeah, Beauty and the Beast gotta go. Yeah, Beauty and the Beast.
I'm
gotta
gonna
go.
have to do Beauty and the Beast.
Why?
Because Aladdin, my man, was one. You had the what do you call it? The
ham sandwich.
no,
The genie.
the genie.
He rubbed his hands together.
rubbed his hands.
The blue guy.
Yeah, the big blue guy.
Because
He's
we
a big
like a
Smurf.
character, or let's talk about the premise of the movie, Beauty and the Beast. It's what's on the inside that counts.
She
True
sounded like,
love
no, you
can
guys
happen
deeply.
anywhere.
We're way more
Yeah, I
simple
don't
than
even-
you. We're way
Yeah, I
more
don't even
simple
care.
than you.
Yeah, I don't
She's
care
like,
about
no,
none of
this
that.
is deep.
Aladdin is two 15-year-old kids that are like
Hey.
in lust with each other and
Yeah,
think they're
they
going to live
are.
happily ever after. Come on.
Billy said, "Yeah, they are." and even the remake of Aladdin was good too. I liked
I
it.
didn't like that
Well,
one.
What?
Nah.
You're tripping, Billy.
Nobody liked that.
It was good. It did get compared to the original.
It's because Will Smith is black, so that's why.
But, oh, Billy, shots fired. The soundtrack
Really,
alone
Ryan?
of Aladdin is the reason why Aladdin can't go anywhere. The soundtrack alone.
Yeah, you know what? You're so right.
Arabian
But
Nights.
stay with you.
Oh, let's hear it. Hey, Billy.
Oh man, no, you're right. I should have threw Jungle Book in there, but that was good. Yeah, I'm with you guys. Beauty and the Beast has to go. So
Real quick, Billy, what's the magic number today?
31.
Oh, wow, baby.
Oh, man, you made me feel old when you said that. Hold up.
Hey, I said, well,
Okay, Billy.
AJ started working out his shoulder and stuff like that when he said that. So
yeah, scratching back of my neck when he said that. 31.
Hey, come holla at me in about a month. Your boy started some jiu-jitsu. Come holla at me in about a month.
That's what I heard.
What's up? So anyways, hey, Glenna, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for what you do. You're appreciated. Your partners are appreciated, and dispatchers around the world are appreciated. Just like AJ said, go out there, get to know the people that you work with, and so that way we can all be better for the communities that we serve. So with that being said, we love y'all, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye. Thank you.
Peace.